The story begins with the boy's thoughts about his past memories. He recalls it being truly pleasant. Currently, he ventures into an abandoned building, hoping to find a thrill he hadn't found in his recent explorations. Disappointed by the lack of any supernatural phenomena, he leaves the desolate place, yearning for something more. He considers visiting a famously haunted spot after starting high school. But a sudden noise catches his attention, an argument between two girls. Peeking through a nearby window, he witnesses one girl relentlessly bullying another, criticizing her appearance and her voice, while accusing her of playing the victim. Disturbed by the severity of the situation, he feels uneasy. The masked boy appears from behind the tormentor, startling her, and she runs away. Surprised by the turn of events, the rescued girl realizes it was the boy who had intervened. He apologizes for his sudden appearance, downplaying the significance of his actions and quickly leaving. Moved by his kindness, she thanks him sincerely and asks for his name. But the boy, wanting to avoid attention, insists it was no big deal, and hurries away. As he runs home, he stops by a familiar bush, reflecting on the feeling of being enveloped by the steady beat of his own heart. However, this time, the feeling is different. He is Haruka Kawatsuji, a 15-year-old in his third year of junior high, and this is how he would introduce himself. Looking at the bush reminds him of a moment when he fell from a window, luckily escaping unharmed thanks to the bush's cushioning effect. The adrenaline rush from that incident left an indelible mark on Haruka, becoming the driving force behind his pursuit of thrilling experiences. Worried for her son's safety, his mother set a single rule for his life: never climb anything that could lead to a fall. But Haruka, undeterred, sought to replicate that excitement through other means. Jogging and exploring supposedly haunted places became his outlets, but they couldn't compare to the intensity he craved. The memory of that day still echoes in his mind, and nothing he did could ever come close to that pristine sound. The hazy days passed by, leaving Haruka feeling detached from reality. For a moment, he wondered if he would ever experience that feeling again. 6 months later, Haruka's high school journey began, bringing with it the hope of new opportunities. He introduced himself to the class. He wondered to himself, how many more times would he have to repeat this introduction at each stage of his life? Haruka was surprised when the girl sitting behind him spoke up, introducing herself as Kisaki Tokano, the very same girl he had helped a few months prior. Her unexpected appearance left him momentarily flustered, but he still replied with a shy smile. After that, Kisaki approached Haruka to talk and mentioned the strange coincidence of them both going to the same school and meeting again. She expressed her gratitude, explaining that thanks to his intervention that day, she no longer had to deal with that other girl, and things had gotten much better. Although Haruka tried to downplay it, Kisaki insisted that it was all thanks to him. During class, the teacher announced they were looking for library volunteers, but no one raised their hand. When Haruka decided to join and raised his hand, he realized Kisaki was doing the same thing. And just like that, the two were unexpectedly assigned to work together. Surprisingly, Haruka and Kisaki were chosen as the first-year representatives for the library committee. After mentioning this interesting coincidence, Kisaki asked about Haruka's hobbies. He revealed that he loves the horror genre, including movies, books, and video games. Haruka even mentioned that the first time he met Kisaki was when he was on his way to a supposedly haunted location. Kisaki remarked that their meeting could have been a coincidence, or it could have been fate. Her words flustered Haruka, but Kisaki quickly elaborated, and he reassured her not to be so embarrassed. Back in the classroom, as Haruka was eating lunch, one of his friends expressed his envy, teasing that he was playing his cards right by being able to talk to the pretty girls in class. While he hadn't even had a chance to interact with any of them yet, another friend accused the first one of just being jealous. Meanwhile, Haruka seemed completely unfazed and made an excuse to get some water. His casual reaction only fueled his friend's jealousy. Another friend commented that Haruka had been like that since junior high, always uninterested in girls and often seeming distracted. Watarai joked that he wished the world would just burn every time something bad happened. While getting water, Haruka thought about his friend's comment. He figured that any boy his age would be excited to talk to a beautiful girl like Kisaki, but he seemed to be quite indifferent. After school at the bus stop, Haruka said goodbye to Kisaki as she boarded her bus. His red-haired friend remarked that the two of them going to the bus stop together was beyond just being friends. Haruka casually explained that he only did it because Kisaki had asked him to. Suddenly, another girl called out his name and asked if he had a moment. Haruka's friend was surprised to find out he even knew girls from other schools. He jokingly expressed his disappointment, saying he didn't raise Haruka to be like this. Haruka wittily replied, "I don't recall you raising me at all, Ryuji." Haruka recognized the girl. and agreed to talk with her. They walked into a garden where the girl warned him to stay away from Kisaki. She explained that they had become friends in junior high and used to sit next to each other in class. At first, she didn't mind being friends with Kisaki. I even thought she was cute and kind. However, things quickly changed. Kisaki started to become obsessed with her, from finding out what shampoo she used and using the same kind, to waiting in front of her house every morning to walk to school together. Kisaki would also get jealous whenever Rinko talked to other friends, always wanting to be by her side and never leaving her sight. Finally, Rinko couldn't take it anymore, and decided to confront Kisaki, which was the same day Haruka saw them. Surprisingly, Kisaki backed down. However, from that day on, Rinko had a bad feeling when she heard Kisaki was preparing to transfer schools. She suspected that Kisaki had switched her target to someone else. Haruka, remaining skeptical, asked for proof of what Rinko was saying about Kisaki. Without a moment's hesitation, Rinko showed him a series of messages and missed calls from Kisaki on her phone. And it didn't stop there. She was also ready to show Haruka photos that seemed to prove their relationship. Although the evidence seemed convincing, Haruka still found it hard to believe that Kisaki would go so far as to transfer schools just to get close to him. But Rinko, undeterred by his skepticism, firmly asserted Kisaki's capability. She went even further, warning Haruka that whenever Kisaki says something happened by chance, it's actually not by chance at all. This disturbing revelation sent a chill down Haruka's spine, prompting him to ask Rinko about her motive for sharing this information. In response, Rinko explained that she felt liberated from Kisaki thanks to Haruka. And to return the favor, she felt it was her responsibility to warn him about the dangers and manipulation he might face. With a final warning to stay away from Kisaki, she left, leaving Haruka to ponder the recent revelations. The next morning in class, Haruka decided to confront Kisaki. He walked over to her and suggested a private conversation outside, saying he had something important to tell her. The two of them left the classroom, standing face to face in the tense atmosphere. After a moment of silence, Haruka suddenly asked Kisaki if she wanted to go out with him. This unexpected proposal stunned Kisaki, and she initially hesitated, unsure how to react. However, Kisaki's demeanor shifted quickly, and she asked Haruka if he truly understood the gravity of what he was getting into. She warned that once she started, there would be no stopping. Haruka looked deep into Kisaki's eyes, the eyes that always made him feel a little strange, and a sudden clarity flashed in his mind. Despite the unsettling warnings and revelations, he realized that she might be the one who could make his heart race with that primal sound. Haruka thanked her, barely able to contain his excitement. Kisaki smiled back, and the light in her eyes shone brighter than ever before. The next morning, as Haruka was leaving his house, everything looked the same, but he could feel that things were no longer as they were. As he stepped out of the elevator, she was standing there, waiting for him. Kisaki greeted him warmly, and Haruka wondered to himself how she was here, considering he had never even told her his address. Reflecting on Kisaki's somewhat chaotic nature, and the very sense of excitement he'd been searching for, Haruka asked her, "Isn't the school in the opposite direction from your house?" Kisaki replied that she had guessed when Haruka would be leaving, so she didn't have to wait too long. It had only taken her a single day to figure out his schedule. Haruka recalled something Rinko had once said about Kisaki, that she hadn't left since that day. Now, things were starting to make sense. Kisaki must have been following him since their very first meeting, silently nurturing her feelings for him. Haruka's thoughts were interrupted when Kisaki mentioned that the bus stop was in the opposite direction. Her eyes never left him as they both boarded the bus. Haruka was rather amused that she had managed to catch him so completely off guard. Eventually, he realized he was actually getting uncomfortable with her staring. Kisaki apologized, admitting that she was worried about whether or not they were truly a couple. Haruka, intrigued, asked why she wanted to start dating in the first place. Kisaki replied that before getting into this relationship, she wanted to make sure she was fully prepared. There was one thing she had to settle, which is why she couldn't have started dating him yesterday. Then, she said regretfully that she couldn't walk Haruka home after school because she had a few things to take care of. When Rinko finally got home, she found Kisaki waiting for her at the gate. When Kisaki asked why Rinko was so surprised to see her, Rinko replied that it had been a long time since they'd last seen each other. Kisaki disagreed and confronted Rinko about the incident a few days ago when Rinko had paid Haruka a surprise visit. As it turned out, Kisaki had spotted the two of them from a bus, and she'd wasted no time getting off at the next stop to follow them. Suddenly, it dawned on Rinko that Kisaki must have been eavesdropping on their conversation, and she figured that must be the reason for this visit. However, with a sudden shift in her demeanor, Kisaki thanked Rinko, announcing that Haruka had confessed his feelings to her yesterday, and now they were happily dating. Everything had gone perfectly, even though Rinko had tried to keep Haruka away from her. Despite her shock at this sudden turn of events, Rinko was still worried that Kisaki had come for revenge. Kisaki then told Rinko to calm down, adding that if she truly wanted revenge, she would have already done it. Back at Haruka's house, Haruka received a call from Rinko. She had given him her number just in case he ever needed it. When Haruka answered the phone, Rinko immediately yelled, asking why on earth he would choose to date Kisaki, especially after she had warned him about everything. In his defense, Haruka explained that Rinko's warnings were the very reason he wanted to date Kisaki. He was drawn to her unpredictable nature, and thought a girlfriend like her was the best he could ask for, since she always gave him her undivided attention. After a short conversation, Rinko suddenly hung up the phone with an empty expression. Haruka thought that Rinko seemed strange during the call, because she was giving off some odd cues, such as the way she mentioned kaisakai and the questions that sounded like they were meant for someone else. These signs led Haruka to conclude that Kisaki was with Rinko, even though he didn't want to believe it. Realizing this, Haruka couldn't give the natural reaction Rinko was hoping for. Back at Rinko's house, Kisaki asked Rinko if she was satisfied with the current situation. She knew how Haruka felt, though she was a little surprised, and mentioned that Haruka knew she was eavesdropping. But she was happy that he had finally eased her worries. Rinko said that Haruka might have been lying about what he said, but Kisaki replied that she didn't care about that, because she believed it was real enough for her. Even if only for a short time, she was satisfied with being Haruka's first priority. She was simply content with that. Even though Rinko didn't understand anything about their relationship, Kisaki felt lucky and grateful that their respective quirks seemed to complement each other, and that they had found one another. Afterward, Kisaki suggested to Rinko that they should spend more time together, since she was the only friend Kisaki could talk to about Haruka, now that they were officially dating. And just like that, everything was decided, with nothing holding them back anymore. The next day at school, Kisaki asked Haruka if she could come over to his house after class, because she wanted their first date to be somewhere special. Both of them were thinking about yesterday's phone call. Haruka was a little surprised to hear that, but he eventually agreed. After school, they walked home together, the air around them filled with the excitement of their first official date. Haruka, though a bit surprised, still found it exciting and agreed, and the two of them then headed to his house together. They were greeted by Haruka's mother when they entered the house. At first, it seemed like she had no idea that her son had brought a friend home. Haruka was surprised to see his mother not only happy to see Kisaki, but also welcoming her as if they were old friends reuniting. It was then revealed Kisaki and Yumi-san already knew each other. 6 months ago, Kisaki had rushed to help her after a bicycle accident. Yumi said that she found Kisaki to be very reliable and kind whenever they happened to meet. Their chance encounters had continued to occur, and Haruka couldn't help but be surprised to see Kisaki smiling warmly, as if she were acknowledging that those meetings were just coincidences. Kisaki's place in Haruka's family was further solidified by her pleasant personality and genuine kindness, which had endeared her to Yumi. Haruka began to realize that Kisaki had orchestrated these seemingly chance encounters, including getting to know his parents. This realization made Haruka feel as though he'd been caught in an intricate web that Kisaki had woven. A sudden feeling that sent a shiver down his spine. Haruka started to worry that Kisaki might have some kind of influence over his mother. When his mother asked about their relationship, hoping they were just friends, Haruka shyly corrected her, revealing that they were, in fact, dating. Haruka's mother had thought they were simply friends. Haruka felt embarrassed, seeing his mother express genuine joy about their relationship, and even advised him to treat Kisaki with respect. After a while, Kisaki was exploring Haruka's room with a happy smile on her face. Haruka began to wonder if his room was really that interesting. She said she could only come in today because she didn't have a chance before. On the other hand, a wave of suspicion began to wash over Haruka as he realized he could use the opportunity his mother gave him, fetching snacks to slip away for a moment. This would give him the freedom to check if Kisaki was secretly up to something. After returning with the snacks, he cautiously approached his room and gently opened the door. However, as he pushed the door open, Haruka caught Kisaki in a situation that looked like she was doing something wrong. Haruka immediately confronted Kisaki about her actions. Kisaki quickly apologized, explaining that she had been unintentionally stroking and smelling his bed, which left him feeling very confused. She went on to explain that she got lost in thought and accidentally buried her face in his bed. He admitted he felt bewildered and didn't know what to do, as this was the first time he'd ever brought a girlfriend home. And now she was in this situation. To steer away from the awkward topic, Kisaki asked about what he usually does with his friends. As he was talking about playing games, he glanced over at his game console, but immediately noticed it had been turned off for some unknown reason. Kisaki, showing interest in his hobbies, suggested they watch a movie together later. She was standing at the door, ready to leave, when Haruka's mother smiled and invited her to come back anytime. Haruka expressed his gratitude for the time she'd spent with him. His mother chimed in, emphasizing the importance of cherishing memories at their age. Kisaki, understanding his feelings, left, saying she cherished every moment. She added that she had met Yumi and complimented her. Yumi smiled in return and gave her a hug, showing that she truly appreciated her actions. Even though he knew that Kisaki was just trying to get on his mother's good side, he felt like she genuinely meant what she said. After she left, Haruka's mother approached him and asked about their relationship, as well as how they started dating. There was no hint of emotion on Kisaki's face as she secretly listened to their conversation through an earpiece. After Haruka explained their special bond, his mother expressed her satisfaction with how well they were getting along. Kisaki could only listen from a distance, but she was delighted with the bug she had planted in his room, which looked like an adapter plugged into his game console. She considered the day a success, as it would help her learn more about him. Haruka's body trembled, his heart pounding in his chest. He gathered his strength to face Kisaki, who had just attacked him mercilessly. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as he asked her why she would do this to him. In a quiet, trembling voice, she murmured, "This is what you wanted," while a cruel smile slowly spread across her face. As he begged her to stop, she advanced on him, slow and deliberate. In that moment, he suddenly woke up, and a wave of relief washed over him as he realized it was all just a dream. What was that feeling, he thought. A warm greeting came from Kisaki, who was standing right by his desk in class. She came closer and asked if they could have lunch together. Haruka couldn't help but notice how calm and composed she was, thinking about what she had done that morning and her explanation. Kisaki said she hadn't meant to scare him, but simply wanted to watch him while he slept. He recalled the cunning method she'd used to get into his room. She had come over early in the morning and pretended they were doing morning exercises for a sports competition, and his mother had let her into his room without any trouble. He was horrified by his mother's carelessness. As he agreed to have lunch, a girl named Sakurako, who seemed to know him, approached but asked to speak privately with Kisaki. A private conversation between the two girls began. Sakurako introduced herself and said she went to the same middle school as Haruka. After Kisaki introduced herself, Sakurako reassured her that the only reason she came over was to ask something. She was curious about how Kisaki had become friends with Haruka. The fact that they were dating took Sakurako by surprise. Sakurako burst into tears, expressing her shock that Haruka had abandoned her and was now dating another girl. Her sudden emotional reaction made Kisaki curious, and she asked why it was so hard to believe. Sakurako revealed that ever since she was in kindergarten, she had always been the center of everyone's attention. Not just because the boys wanted her, but also because the girls wanted to be her. She recounted how in middle school, she made it her goal to make Haruka fall for her, to get her pride back. Haruka's lack of interest in her was a humiliation, and she was determined to make him confess his feelings for her. Kisaki cut her off, saying that Sakurako had developed feelings for him, but his actions made her realize that she wanted a man like him for herself. She could hardly believe that Haruka, who was often seen as slow when it came to love, could fall for a girl like that. Ever since Haruka started high school, the fact they addressed each other by their last names, which Sakurako saw as a lack of intimacy, was one of the reasons she doubted the authenticity of their relationship. In response, Kisaki said that Haruka had made it clear they were dating. Sakurako continued to ask if they had kissed, hugged, or even given each other gifts. Sakurako questioned the legitimacy of their relationship. Due to Kisaki's lack of response, she argued that Haruka had been very kind to her in the past, even giving her a hair tie as a gift. News of this revelation took Kisaki by complete surprise, and Sakurako tried to provoke jealousy in her by emphasizing the close bond she and Haruka had, and thus achieved her goal. Sakurako proudly declared that Haruka had given her a hair tie as a graduation gift. Kisaki just let out a soft laugh, a reaction that infuriated Sakurako, who then demanded to know what Kisaki found so funny. Kisaki smiled and said she was impressed by all of Sakurako's grandstanding, suggesting she was simply surprised by the dramatic story and exaggerated claims she was making. Kasaki revealed that it was Sakurako who had forced Haruka to buy that hair tie as a graduation memento, which was nothing like receiving a heartfelt gift. Sakurako was shocked to learn that Kasaki knew about this, and Kasaki reminded her that they were on a first-name basis. Haruka had a habit of refusing gifts he didn't truly care for. Sakurako couldn't understand how Kasaki knew so much about Haruka, since they had only met recently. In response, Kasaki calmly replied that she had been watching him the entire time. She expressed her disbelief in the honesty and innocence that Sakurako claimed Haruka possessed. Kasaki didn't believe Sakurako when she said their relationship was like a close friendship. Kasaki wanted to understand Haruka better, to get to know him on a more personal level, and she didn't want to force her own thoughts or preferences on him. She clarified that her only goal was to become the most important person to him, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to achieve that. She then left, saying that threats wouldn't work on her. As Haruka was chatting with his classmates, he received a call from Sakurako. She called his girlfriend completely insane, saying that she knew where he was and might have been eavesdropping on his conversations or was stalking him. Haruka calmly replied that he wouldn't be surprised if Kasaki knew what he was up to, which shocked Sakurako, who asked if he was serious. Haruka explained that they both knew Kasaki was capable of crazy things when they started dating, but they left it unsaid. Haruka said they had an unspoken agreement, and although Sakurako was angry at first, she eventually accepted what had happened and apologized for bothering him. Her eyes filled with tears, feeling abandoned. When Haruka saw Kasaki walking through the school hallway, she stopped and asked him if he hadn't eaten yet. Haruka sarcastically replied that he was just about to get something and had thought about not waiting for her. She asked him if he had any special requests for her. He thought that he wanted her to keep doing surprising things for him like she did in the morning, but the experience would be different if someone had to ask for those kinds of surprises. He figured the most important thing was that she did those things of her own free will. He replied that she didn't need to change a thing, that she was fine just the way she was. Some of the guys were complimenting Kasaki, saying that her face was glowing and that she was even cuter than before. That's the face of a girl in love. According to Terry, who suggested that a woman shows a certain warmth from having found someone special. Ryuji asked Haruka if he had noticed anything special, and Haruka replied that they had started dating. Ryuji's question reminded him of the old days when Haruka never showed interest in anyone. The whole group was surprised and asked what had happened to him. Haruka said that he and Kasaki just clicked. Watarai remarked that there is a single force that can destroy all of a person's principles and habits, and that is fate. Hearing this, Haruka smiled and recalled Kasaki's words, then murmured, "A lie that became the truth," leaving his friends confused. They shared their thoughts on how he's changed, and Ryuji commented that this would be an interesting topic for their after-school chat, since he was meeting up with his friends from middle school. Watarai barely remembered anyone, but agreed to go when he heard a girl had organized it. Meanwhile, in the library, Haruka was working at his desk, while Kasaki was struggling to return some books. Haruka came over to help her, and she felt guilty for making him do his job. However, he reassured her, saying that they should help each other out. Then, she suggested they go to the public library after school and recommend books to each other, thinking it would be a fun time. Haruka agreed but said, "Not today. I have plans with my middle school friends." Hearing that, Kasaki asked, "So I'm not your number one?" Haruka thought about how meeting her had changed him, then replied that she meant a lot to him, but he also wanted to cherish the other parts of his life. Kasaki's expression changed, and she said, "You're just choosing them over me." He should only be thinking about her, wondering if it was so hard, especially since he had accepted her for who she was. She left, sarcastically apologizing that his friends were more important. And after the meetup with his middle school friends, the group walked out, chatting cheerfully. Sakurako noticed the look on Haruka's face and told him that if he needed anything, he should just come to her. He thanked her, and just then his phone vibrated, and he saw a message from Rinko. We see Kasaki sitting with Rinko, thanking her for listening, but saying she didn't need to do anything. Although Rinko was still a bit suspicious, she said she was in a good position to talk about this. "Kasaki thanked her, my love.